It's the Week 12 By-Mageddon starts and sits. Let's hop right in. And welcome back to the Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Chris.
And I'm your host, Jono.
Yeah, I guess we're on a digital delay. So Jono is at home right now, and I am in the studio. So we are bringing it to you like the old days, like year one.
Remote. Yeah, like the OG filming sessions. Well, I'm also sick. I'm getting over being sick, and I did not want to infect the studio. So
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Well,
keep your filth out of this house.
So we wanted to get this episode to you guys yesterday prior to the Thursday night matchup. However, me being sick and Chris with his work schedule, we were unable to get together and get that put together. But tonight we're here as we are talking. Thursday Night Football is already on the go. We already had one drive by the Pittsburgh Steelers with a missed field goal by Boswell with horrible weather out there. This is one that we would have cautioned to not start many players on here because of the weather, but we really didn't know too much about it until really this morning bad the weather was really going to be.
Start the defenses and start your running backs when these
but even the running backs, if you were watching yesterday during the Thursday matchup, the opening kickoff, we saw the kicker's foot slip on the kick, and we saw the opening kickoff return be a little bit touchy with the feet. You're not going to see many cuts, so a lot of defensive ground and pound type of in the trenches game we're going to see here.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, let's jump into the slate, into the Sunday slate. We got some exciting games, obviously with the By-Mageddon. We got a bunch of teams on bye this week. So the good news is we got some people coming back off the injury report to take those spots of the bye week, guys. So let's start with the Texans and Titans first. From this game, this is one of those that we talked about it on Monday's episode about the Titans and kind of there being some key fantasy guys to start for the Titans. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, they've been great. Will Levis even is a sneaky matchup. The Texans defense just hasn't been that good.
They've been better than they had been in the past. But, I mean, listen, they did just play Dallas. So, again, take that with a grain of salt. But looking at it here, sure. I think with the Titans offense, you can treat them similar to Dallas. I mean, they really don't have a prolific running back. Tony Pollard's been okay. Tajay Spears is coming off a concussion, probably not going to play. And then you look at everything else across the board. It's like, well, they got one wide receiver, and then Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has been filling in as that wide receiver 2 role. So to me, when I look at this, I'm starting Nico Collins. You can possibly flex Tank Dell here.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. With the way Joe Mixon's been running the football, with the way this offense has been really focused around running the football, do you trust playing multiple receivers from this wide receiver core, or is it just Nico Collins?
No, I mean Nico Collins first and foremost, like 100%. If I'm going to talk about playing Tank Dell, it's somebody that I'm thinking about. But if you look back at some of the teams that have faced him, we saw Amari Cooper in the Bills. Amari Cooper, 4 catches, 66 yards and a touchdown, 125 from Keon Coleman, and another 65 from Khalil Shakir. That's 3 players that were able to feast for fantasy enough, and especially in PPR, especially with Shakir with 7 receptions and 4 for Amari Cooper with the touchdown. That's huge numbers there. And then you look at the Lions right here. The Lions were the ones that looked like they probably had the least effective game against them, but you still had a touchdown from Khalif Raymond and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they ran all over this team. So let's go to teams that struggled to run all over this team. This past week, the Vikings did. And when you look at the Vikings, what they did just this past week against the Titans, Jordan Addison, 61 on 3 catches and a touchdown, 81 for Jefferson. So, I think there's room for a second wide receiver in Houston. Now, that being said, I don't think you're going to see Joe Mixon do what the Lions did to the Titans, because it's not a 2-headed monster in that backfield. It's just Joe Mixon.
Yeah. But the way he's been playing, you don't need 2 people. He's doing it all himself. And they're setting him up.
Correct. Correct.
Joe Mixon's been just an absolute stud this year. And for where he was being drafted, what a steal. But yeah, like for me, it's hard. I'm a Tank Dell owner, and it's hard for me to justify starting him when Mixon has been getting all the red zone touches. He's been getting all the significant yards, and he's been breaking them off. So
Well, here's the only reason why, as a Tank Dell owner, I like the flex play, is they've been able to shut down wide receiver ones a little more often and at least keep him out of the end zone. Um, you know, if you look at the Lions game, Amon-Ra St. Brown had 2 catches for 7 yards and a touchdown. When you look at the Bills wide receivers, Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman ended up being the number one guy with 125 yards, but Khalil Shakir really feasted the most with 7 for 65. You look at the Colts back in week 6, Josh Downs was the number one receiver there for that team. Michael Pittman was the one who still got a touchdown, but 35 yards. Even you look at last week at the Vikings, Jordan Addison, 61 yards in the touchdown, only 81 yards on 6 catches for Justin Jefferson. They find ways to take that number one guy out of there. And if they're able to play the run game good enough like they did against the Vikings last week, when you see Aaron Jones only go for 39 yards and Cam Akers only go for 25 yards, then we talk about if there's a way to stop Joe Mixon, they're going to have to go to the air. And I think Tank Dell is going to be sort of the off coverage man that can possibly end up having a big game.
One can only hope, right?
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, though, what are your thoughts on this offense here?
On the Titans offense?
Yeah, on the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, so Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I think it has to be started. I mean, we talk about, well, I've talked about this in the past where I really like trendy players. And if you look at the guy that's been, 4 out of the last 5 weeks, he's had touchdowns. He's the second fiddle to Calvin Ridley, but he still is explosive. This offense is starting to find itself a little bit more. Now, I don't think it's a great offense, but are they sustaining some fantasy value? And the answer is yes. Is you have Calvin Ridley and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine and Tony Pollard that all have been effective fantasy players in the last 5 weeks. And so sticking with that, yeah, you got to love Westbrook-Ikhine for a flex play this week, especially with all the buys that are happening at the wide receiver position. Calvin Ridley, you're going to go ahead and start. And Tony Pollard, you're going to start. Like this defense, again, like I said in the beginning of this conversation, is that they just really haven't been that good.
Yeah, and when you speak of Tony Pollard, I'm looking at the stats here. There's only been 2 running backs that have run for over 100 yards against the Texans. That was Jonathan Taylor in his second face-off against the Texans on 20 carries, I believe it was, 105. And then you had on the first face-off in week 3 when you had Aaron Jones go 19 for 102. Besides that, everybody's been held to, I think that next highest may have been like 90 yards or 81 yards for James Cook. So I don't suspect a giant on-the-ground game from Pollard, especially with the fact that there's a chance they could be chasing points if the Texans' offense is able to get going like we saw last year at any point here with Nico Collins coming back. Let's not forget, the Cowboys game looked close, but we had a bad penalty called on an illegal man downfield. It took away an early touchdown to Nico Collins, which would have just pulled that game way far away for the Cowboys a little bit earlier on.
Yeah. All right, so the next game, we got the Vikings and the Bears. Who do you like in this one?
This is one that could be set up for a Bears upset. I mean, you talk about
You think so?
Offensive coordinator change. A change in listen, I don't think that always lends well to a team compared to a head coach because it's a whole new game plan that you have to learn. And that what they were doing wasn't working before. And you have DeAndre Swift with a growing injury, so that scares me a little bit. But at the end of the day, I didn't suspect Chicago beating Minnesota on the ground. It's going to be through the air. But this is one of those ones that it's going to be a close game. Minnesota's line is only 3.5 points, and it's an over-under 39. It's a half. It's a low-scoring projected game. So this could go either way. When it's not quite a 1.5 point or 1 point difference here. But for 3.5 point line on Minnesota, I guess it's just because they're in Chicago. I still think Minnesota finds a way to win this one, but I think it's going to be closer than people think, and I also think it's going to be lower scoring than people think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Chicago offense scares me in this game because the Minnesota defense has really been getting after the quarterback. They've been effective at that, and the one thing that I mean, you've seen the last couple of weeks where Caleb Williams has really struggled. Where he's also been impressive is his escapability, but his scrambling out of the pocket, he's under pressure a lot, and so
Yeah.
he's constantly on the move. And Minnesota is going to get after him. So I'm looking for DJ Moore to have kind of a big play. I think he's going to be set up nicely. I like Roshan in this game.
I actually like Keenan Allen a little bit more. I think this is a sneaky sleeper pick, and that's because if this offensive coordinator change is going to do anything, they're going to try and get the ball out of his hands quickly so he doesn't have to succumb to the pressures of Minnesota.
Right. And
which
you think that's Keenan Allen versus DJ Moore?
No, I think it's DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. I think Odunze is the man out. I think he's the more downfield threat that they've been using, and I think it should open up opportunities for some big plays that Minnesota's been giving up. But I think Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are going to be the go-tos, and I think
maybe four targets to Odunze, probably down the field shots.
Yeah, and maybe he catches 3 of those. But I'm thinking Keenan Allen gets peppered. I'm thinking DJ Moore with those screen passes and swing passes, an opportunity to just get the ball in his hands to do something that we normally see too as well. They got to get the offense moving somehow, and it's got to be in your playmakers, and it's got to be in your veteran playmakers, in my opinion.
Yeah, and on the other side of the football, do you start Aaron Jones this week? Do you like Sam Darnold this week?
Well, here's the one thing I will say. If I'm definitely, before I get into Aaron Jones, if you Roshan Johnson is a sneaky play. I don't think it's a high volume play. I think it's a touchdown potential play because when they're in the red zone, he's already scoring ahead of DeAndre Swift. And if DeAndre Swift is not playing, then he's going to get more of those touches. So I like it if you're in a desperation move or looking for a flex play. I think he's a good opportunity because he could fall in the end zone once or twice. On the other side of the ball for Aaron Jones, Chicago hasn't been able to stop anybody with the run game, so I think they're going to lean heavily on the run to start, and it's really going to open up the pass play. And if you look at the stats for receivers against Chicago, one of the things I noticed is they still let up a decent amount of plays and a decent amount of scoring on the fantasy side, not to the whole wide receiver group, similar to how we were talking about the Texans game earlier with the Titans. The Titans still let up plays. But you still had games where you saw Noah Brown on that Hail Mary got the most of his touchdown in the 50 yards there. But Terry McLaurin still had 125 yards. Last week, Christian Watson had 150 yards. Jaden Reed, their wide receiver one or pseudo wide receiver one, had the touchdown and 23 yards on 2 receptions. And I think an offense that can spread the ball around well is going to do a good job against the Bears. And that's one thing I think the Vikings have going for them is Sam Darnold has weapons. And if you look at the Patriots, week 10 against the Bears, Austin Hooper, 64 yards, and Hunter Henry, 14 yards, 69 yards for the tight ends on the Cardinals the week before, 77 come of them from Zach Ertz from the Commanders on week 8. This could be a Hawkinson game too as well. Jaguars.
And yet
Evan Ingram had 102 yards.
Kraft last week.
Yeah, they did. And you know what? It wasn't for lack of trying. He had that one target that could have been a touchdown. But again, there was a lack of volume because this team couldn't stop the run. It was a huge, huge Josh Jacobs game. And I don't know if that's going to be the same thing here against the Vikings in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, my sneaky play that I like from this game is Jalen Nailor. Because you're right, like the Chicago defense has given up a lot to wide receivers, and they peppered them all around. I think Addison and Jefferson are due for their games, but I think Nailor can sneak in for a touchdown this week.
It tends to be the off wide receiver that's getting that work. Like if you look at all these,
right.
You see Alec Pierce, you see except Nico Collins, but I mean he's an alpha there. But you look at, like I said, the Cardinals here, Marvin Harrison only had 2 catches for 34 yards. Nobody did anything there. Patriots aren't too much to talk about, but even, like I said, Christian Watson in the Jaguars game, Gabe Davis was the person who had 2 touchdowns and 45 yards. Jalen Coker over top of Deontay Johnson in week 5. Even Tutu Atwell in week 4. I know both the big receivers were gone, but Robinson and Whittington were outpaced by Tutu Atwell in that game. Yep. So that's where I agree with Nailor or Addison as a sneaky play, even though it doesn't look good on paper for a Vikings receiver. Somebody's going to have to catch the ball, and you know what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and take away Justin Jefferson, and they're going to try and put pressure on on Darnold, and that's why I like Hawkinson, and that's why I like Addison. I don't like them enough in our league, Chris, against you to play both of them
That's fine.
because I'm playing Hawkinson, but I like him enough as a flex play for Addison, and a flex play for Naylor. I think either one of them can have an opportunity to score.
Yeah. So let's move on to another divisional matchup, which is the Commanders and the Cowboys. This should be hopefully a doozy. With the defense looking a lot better, I guess, for the Cowboys. Do you trust anyone on the Cowboys anymore?
Here, no, I don't. I think if you are the Washington Commanders, you are going to double team. Actually, you know what? There's one person,
Jalen Tolbert?
Schumacher.
Okay.
He was a second round draft pick for the Cowboys. He obviously got beat out by Ferguson last year and going into this year. But he had, I think, maybe it was 9 or 10 targets last week after Ferguson went down. And I think he's going to be the relief valve for Cooper Rush. I think if you're the Washington Commanders, take away CeeDee Lamb and you're not afraid of Rico Dowdle, I think that's the only guy that could hurt you. And I think he's worth a streaming tight end option because of just pure volume. Nonetheless, not to say that he's the best streaming option out there, but there are a lot of people on bye this week. So he's somebody that I'd be looking to if you're dipping into the waiver wire or doing a last-minute swap of somebody.
Yeah, it's not a bad play, even though Washington's been fairly good against tight ends this year. But yeah, I think
it's actually been their. I will say that's been their weakest against tight ends because that's the one that they just decide to let go. I mean, you're talking about.
I'm talking overall in the NFL against tight ends.
Yeah, you've given up 3 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks to tight ends and an average of probably about 50 yards as well. They gave up 2 tight end touchdowns to the Giants. They gave up 1 to the Steelers. And obviously the Eagles came close with Goddard at 1.2, but he still had 61 yards on 5 catches.
So I stand corrected. And then Schoonmaker is a great play this week. Because I think you're going to see CD get shut down. I don't fear Dowdle at all. Not enough to.
Not fearing Zeke. You're not feeling Cooper Rush. I feel like this is a home run play if you have the Commanders defense too.
Yeah. On the other side, do you like Jaden Daniels this week? Do you think that it's going to be a blowout game where it's going to be a lot of run? Do you think that McLaurin and these wide receivers can get involved in the passing?
So I feel like this is a game that they're going to try and get right, which scares me a little bit facing you with Jaden Daniels. However, the one thing and the one in the back of my mind that I keep thinking to myself is like, this could be a Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, lightning and thunder just blow up because the Cowboys are so bad against the run. And we know Washington wants to establish the run. And now you have a fully healthy Brian Robinson Jr., and Eckler's been playing at his old elite level too as well in both the receiving and the rushing side of things that if they get close, nobody's rushing. I think he has the most rushing touchdowns within the 10-yard line for Brian Robinson. So like when they get close, you're not looking at scrambling touchdowns by Jaden Daniels. They're just going to punch that ball in. And even when they're within the 5 and Brian Robinson wasn't their guy, Eckler was punching it in. So that's the one thing that I don't fear is the fact that that running game is pretty good.
It's been brutal because they've been so effective in running the football within the 5. Jaden just doesn't get the same kind of rushing upside that you see from other rushing quarterbacks, especially around the goal line.
And I don't think he's going to need to because he's not going to get pressured as much as that you want him to. So he's going to get the ball out of his hands. They're not great against the pass, although they did decent enough last week, but they can give up a big play, and I could see a big play to McLaurin here and there. But again, McLaurin's problem has always been not getting in the end zone, consistently. And he's gotten some big touchdowns this year, but consistency is not what he's had. I think the running game is where they're going to feast this week.
Yeah. So moving on to the next game, we got the Patriots and Dolphins in just a thrilling matchup between offenses that look spectacular. The Dolphins just been very underwhelming this year, especially now that they are healthy. We'd expect them to kind of be that offense from last year that dropped 70 points in a game. We just haven't seen that this year. We haven't seen the explosive games from Tyreek. We haven't seen.
I would say no. We have week 1, and that was
Right.
it. And then in week 2, they got blown out by the Bills into concussion. So outside of that, even with the comeback from Tua, they haven't been able to do it.
Yeah. And with Mozart being out, I mean, we talked about it on Monday that Jalen Wright is a dude that if you're looking to throw a dart on the wall and you really need help, this is not a bad option, especially because if Mozart doesn't play, Achane is just not one of those guys that's going to take every carry in the game, and they're going to
Yeah.
have to run the ball in this game. The Patriots have not been terrible. They
They
are.
haven't been that good against the pass either.
No, I'm not talking defensively. I'm just talking offensively. Like this game, I don't know if it's going to get out of control the same way when Brissett was the starter. This offense has been better now that May is the starting quarterback, and so they are moving the ball a little bit more effectively. This could be just a slow game, instead of this large shootout, and I would suspect that again, Achane and Wright are going to be involved with running the ball a lot more.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see
You'd
how
like to
they.
see Tyreek Hill just go off against the Patriots, but
Well, I don't think you're going to see that anyway because Christian Gonzalez is a really damn good
right,
cornerback in the NFL, and he's going to shadow Tyreek Hill. What you want to see is Jalen Waddle going to be unleashed like he was in Week 1. Are they going to get back to trying to get him on the ball across the slant there? Are they, what are they going to do? Because they have no explosive plays on offense. And like, I don't care what you say, a screen pass to HN that he takes to the house is not an explosive play to me. That's like just putting a ball in a guy's hand and just letting people miss tackles. So
well, they're doing that 15 times in a game.
exactly. So that's what I'm saying is like they obviously don't want Tua to get hit. They're trying to protect their quarterback, which is I think the first and foremost is why they're not pushing the ball downfield. They looked a little better last week. 2 big plays early on to Jalen Waddle. Then another big drop that he had too that would have been like a 15-yard reception. And then poof, magic show. He's gone again. And it was just like that before. And I think that's the one worry you have. Now, I do think this week the Patriots have an opportunity to keep up with them. I think if you're a Waddle owner, this is the last week you wait on them because if they can't do it against this team here, I don't think you're going to see it very much more afterwards. At the end of the day, Achane, what I want to see is Jalen Wright going to take some early down work and some rushes, and are we going to see more Achane in the passing game where they've been thriving more, where he's been thriving more, or are we going to see him try and just touch the ball 40 times this game? And
Yeah,
I
it'd be
don't know how
interesting to
they're
see
going to.
what the split's going to look like in this
Yeah,
game. If it's going to be alternating drives, or if, are they going to take certain roles for this offense? It's be interesting to see. Like I said, Jalen Wright I think is a great play for this week. On the Patriots side of things, other than Hunter Henry or Ramondre, is there anyone that you like here?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to throw the ball. And Drake May, to me, Drake May looks good. He's great in rushes too, so you get those rushing yardage too. And I think he's going to have opportunities to scramble and get some rushing plays in. And he's finding open receivers. I think Hunter Henry's a good play. And so because Henry's a good play, I think they're going to be able to move the ball down the field. Austin Hooper even is going to spell some catches like he did this past week. And I also think you're going to see someone like Kayshon Boutte, or you're going to see Jalen Polk or Bourne, somebody like that step up on drive to drive. It may not be the same guy for the whole game, which is why I don't like any single one of them. But to me, this is going to be a test of is Drake May truly a legitimate quarterback against a tough defense that shown last week and shown in previous weeks, they can be thrown on too at times. And Ramondre can't do it all himself. He's had a piss poor yards per carry the past 2 weeks. And if he keeps that up, they're going to have to pass the ball. And to me, Hunter Henry is probably the only one I feel comfortable starting in this offense. And if because of bye week you're in a pinch and have to start Drake May, you got to hope that the Dolphins stop Ramondre and so that he can get work done through the air.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next game, which is the Panthers and the Chiefs. Just the opposite ends of the spectrum here. So the positive thing is it looks like that Jonathan Brooks is going to get his first start against one of the tougher run defenses in the league. And then Adam Thielen,
Not one of the toughest, the toughest.
yeah, and Adam Thielen could be back for this game as well.
Man, Russell Wilson throws such a great deep ball. Sorry.
Yeah, but
Uh,
so
anyway,
with this game, obviously with the Chiefs, are you starting Hunt?
so that's the thing is Pacheco.
Is this the last week that we're going to see Hunt have a major role?
I think this is going to be like this could be the last week you see Kareem Hunt. If you're a Pacheco owner and they say he's suiting up, I'm not starting him yet. I want to see what you got because you've come this far without him. Wait 1 week if you're in a must-win situation rather than throw him out there. Now we have seen in the past with the Chiefs what they do is they will automatically get a guy started and they will just give him everything. But I feel like that's going to be next week for Pacheco. I think it's the last time here. I think Travis Kelce should be a decent play again this week. I know he was a dud last week, but I think it's going to go back to this week. I think the Panthers are going to surprise some people with their ability to get towards the quarterback. We've seen that the Panthers have some okay games on defense here and there and get sacks. I mean, not to say that the Giants game was any testament of how the defense is, but I mean, they got to the quarterback often. I really want to see here, and this is what I've been noticing all season, is Xavier Worthy a flex play for people against good matchups? And I think it comes down to if Pat Mahomes has time to throw the ball. Because when he's pressured, Worthy is not the option. He is rarely the option. The majority of the yardage from Worthy has been on clean pockets and not under duress. So to me, if that's what scares me about using Worthy and how they're using Worthy. I'm starting Pat Mahomes. I'm starting Kareem Hunt here on that end, and I'd probably start Travis Kelce. And I'd even like, if I'm starting Mahomes, I'd like D-Hop this week too.
Yeah, and then on the Panthers side, you have Jonathan Brooks coming back. Chuba Hubbard's been just really the steal of the draft. If you draft him in the first half, he's been unbelievable. Top 5 running back in fantasy football. What do you think happens in that backfield? Do you think it comes to a 50-50 split? Do you think they work Jonathan Brooks slowly into this game? And even if it is just a purely Chuba Hubbard game, do you like him with a really tough matchup?
He's been able to do it against some tough rushing defenses. That's what I'll say. And he's been really hitting home runs with the weak matchups. So I think he's a flex play because he does catch the ball at the backfield. I don't know if they'll put Jonathan Brooks out there to kind of do it all to begin with. I think they want to get him involved in this game. So I suspect Chuba Hubbard being there for pass protection and to leak out in some pass catching opportunities. I'd be interested to see in this one Adam Thielen. Because I think the pass catchers are where you're going to have to be. Adam Thielen's going to be interesting to me because he is a veteran, a good route runner. Maybe he gets himself open. But the only person I'm willing to play from the Panthers and with confidence is Ja'Tavion Sanders, who's been putting up top-end tight end numbers 2 weeks in a row now. I think this is another one against an offense that pretty much shuts down everything but the tight end position. They don't care about covering it. They say, if you want to beat us with a tight end, go ahead. And this is maybe the opportunity for Ja'Tavion Sanders to put up another 50 in a tutty spot or get up in the 80s for yardage.
Yeah, he's a great play this week. The next matchup we got here is your boys, the boys in blue. Buccaneers at the Giants. This should be just this is a gross matchup for.
We say it's a gross matchup, but let's not forget Tommy DeVito was 3-3 last year. All right, and yeah, the Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, that whole little, horse and pony show that New York had going on last year. I think that was the only little piece of dignity they were holding on to. He said the focus.
They had Saquon Barkley last year.
You're not wrong, but the difference there is Saquon Barkley did benefit a lot in receptions from DeVito compared to with Daniel Jones too. So I think I think Tyrone Tracy is somebody that you could play. It's a tough matchup for him, but he's used in multiple facets of the offense. And I think if you're if you're the Giants offense and if you're Tommy DeVito and you're not throwing the ball 45 times to Malik Neighbors, you're doing it wrong at this point. I mean, at this point, you've got to try and do what you can. I know that maybe the Tommy DeVito move is, hey, we're tanking for Shador Sanders. Maybe that's the move. Maybe that's why they didn't put Drew Lock in, because maybe Drew Lock could possibly win a game. But Tommy DeVito is going to go out there, and what we saw, this is what I like. If anybody can go back and look at his film, and this is not me hyping him up to be this superstar, but what he was able to do, he's got a quick release on his arm action. He was able to get out of the pocket and make throws on the run, unlike Daniel Jones, and make some tough throws. And he can scramble a little bit, but his quick release allows him to pull the trigger to open receivers, where Daniel Jones's long arm action and indecisiveness kept those receivers from actually being open and closing that window fast. So that's the only thing I will say is we saw him give a 100-yard game to Jalen Hyatt, a 90-something yard game and a touchdown to Darius Slayton. He had a high yardage game to Wan'Dale Robinson last year. I still think in an opportunity where the weakest part of the defense for the Tampa Bay is their passing defense, there's an opportunity. And on top of that, they're probably going to be down, so they're going to be throwing the ball. So I'm okay with Malik Neighbors here. I think Theo Johnson may be an interesting stream play too. He came on against Carolina. He's a good number 2 option. And then I think this kind of may dispel Wan'Dale Robinson, because he was the check down king for Daniel Jones. And I think you're just going to see this team, Tommy DeVito, not be afraid to push the ball downfield like Daniel Jones was.
Yeah. And on the other side, Mike Evans is back. So love that play. I like the matchup for him. The running backs here, I like both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving in this game.
I love Bucky Irving in this game.
And then Cade Otton has been stellar the last 4 weeks before the bye. So
yeah, I'm interested to see how the return of Mike Evans, who gets kind of tossed to the side. Is it going to be Jalen McMillan?
Well, McMillan hasn't been playing.
Well, I'm saying if he's healthy, is it going to be him or is it going to be Cade Otton? Because
I think Cade Otton still has a role in this offense. I think he's going to take the Godwin role or taking a lot of those Godwin touches.
Well, I guess kind of. I mean, he took a big role, obviously, when both receivers were down. I just could see Jalen McMillan stepping up because he doesn't have to be the main guy now. Yeah,
but McMillan hasn't been playing.
No, I know, but I'm saying he's projecting as a possible play coming off the hamstring, off the bye.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know.
Yeah. It's not bad. I think I still like Otton and I like Evans more.
Yeah,
and
those are the two I'm playing. And I like Baker here
that
too.
I like more than McMillan this week, especially in a matchup where they're going to be playing the Giants. Like we expect them to be up in this game, not a ton of passing. So I don't love the third option in catching for.
Well, by all means, I'm not saying I like McMillan this week. I'm just saying I'm interested to see if he plays, how the target usage shows up and how he performs. Sure. I do like everything you said. I like Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Cade Otton, the two running backs, but I really like Bucky Irving probably the most there. But Rachaad White's a great pass catcher, and I think he's going to have opportunities too. This could be an interesting game that could get out of hand fast, or we could be surprised. I mean, don't forget, Giants defense is not terrible.
Yeah.
So they are giving up big time to the running backs, but they're not that terrible. They've taken away some big receivers from the start of the season to Justin Jefferson, where they did give up a touchdown, but 50-something yards to him instead of 150. Like they can limit people. So I'm interested to see this. Obviously, I'm a Giants fan, so
I know. I get the much needed break from football this week as a fan. Because if I need to watch one more straight week of the Jets just absolutely being miserable, I don't know what I'd do. All right, I'd probably rip the turf off the wall behind me.
Please don't. That took us a while to put up.
Yeah, it did. No, I won't do that. Moving on to the next game, we got the Indianapolis Colts and the Detroit Lions. Yeah, I do not like the outcome of this game that's going to happen for the Indianapolis Colts. Detroit's been on a roll. They've been physical. Like eye test, they're the best team in football.
Yeah, I mean,
I know Buffalo just came off a nice win against Kansas City, and I know that was a really good matchup. But I think like game in, game out, Detroit Lion. They beat the crap out of you on defense. Offensively, they're going to run the ball right down your throat, and they have elite weapons on the outside that if you're going to try to stop their two-headed monster there, they're going to beat you with those weapons on the outside. They're the most complete team in football, and it's not even close.
Well, here's the one thing I will say is Anthony Richardson can do things with his legs, which is nice. He actually completed a ton of passes last week too, which was a anomaly.
It was
for
against
his
the Jets.
Game. But still, like he could have played a Pee Wee team and still had 40%.
He was. I mean, Sauce Gardner is a Pee Wee football player playing flag football out there.
But here's the one thing I will say:
until he proves to me that he can tackle and stop being handsy with people downfield, Sauce, I'm gonna give it to you on this platform.
I'm not afraid of starting Jonathan Taylor. He's an RB2 rank this week for me, but he's involved in the passing game enough to break something off. But the receivers here, if you notice, there's always been one receiver that feasts against the Lions defense. Brian Thomas with 82 yards last week. John Mechie with 74 and a touchdown 2 weeks ago. Jaden Reed, 113. You even had Calvin Ridley with 140.
You're telling me it's Alec Pierce Day?
No, I think it's Josh Downs. I think it's Josh Downs every single week. I think this guy's the most open receiver for this team on a week-to-week basis.
It's true.
And he plays out the slot, which is nice. So it's tougher for them to coverage. And Anzalone's out, which covers the slot and the running backs a lot, which is why I like Jonathan Taylor at the backfield. And I like Josh Downs across the middle because Anzalone is a monster linebacker. He's so good.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be playing. So that definitely opens things up a little bit. I mean, even look at the Seahawks game there. DK had 100 yards. Lockett had 60. I'm going to go through all the games, but 117 for Godwin and Mike Evans only had 42. So I just expect that from this Indianapolis. I think the where Downs is playing is where it's going to benefit, and I think Pittman is going to be held in check another game, unfortunately. But he's just not healthy.
Yeah.
So start Downs. You can start Richardson if that is your bye week replacement. Because his ceiling could be pretty high with the rushing game. And that's really.
And then on the Detroit side, outside the obvious, do you like Jameson Williams in this game? I don't. I think that they're going to be up in this game, and I think that they're going to rely on their running attack to run it down their throat. You're probably going to get Amon-Ra getting his own. Laporta is probably going to get his own.
Well, here's the one thing I will say. Jameson Williams is a big play specialist. He's done a lot with very little, and that's where he doesn't need 7 targets to try and get the end zone. He needs 1.
Right.
And so that's why I consider him a flex play because his ceiling can be so high because all he needs to do is catch one across the middle, and it's to the races, and he's gone. That can happen. That can happen on the first play of the game. So I don't want to necessarily sit him because but if you have somebody else with a volume play, a better opportunity, I'd be going that route for sure. Like if it was between Jameson Williams and Josh Downs, I'm going Downs. In this, like even just talking about these 2 receivers in this game here. But like I said, Jameson has the opportunity to break one. But you play your studs on the Lions. Even Goff, like coming off a game where they were up by so much, and he didn't need to throw 4 more touchdowns after he threw the 3rd touchdown in the game.
But they had to.
And
they did.
They did, and they will. So, that's the one thing. But again, Jameson Williams could have 3 targets, 2 catches, and 110 yards and a touchdown. That's what you get out of him.
No, it's funny. I'm watching the game last week. I'm like, the first Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown. I'm like, this is overkill. All the starters are going to get out of this game. And no, Amon-Ra after that, and they're up 4 scores, still had another 80 yards and a touchdown.
I know, and you had to play him.
And I had to play him, and lost by 8 points.
I know.
Anyway, outside of my woes, my fantasy woes, we got the Broncos and Raiders as the next matchup. Really like this for the Broncos. Not so much for the Raiders. Like at this point, other than Brock Bowers, I don't know if Jacoby Myers maybe, but I don't know.
No, because he's going to get these Patrick Surtain treatment. I think this is a Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, and honestly, I think with the fact that the two starting running backs are injured, you're going to see Amir
Abdullah.
Abdullah or Dylan Labe, and I think that's going to be interesting to see his pass catching ability and opportunities. So
On the Broncos
to
side of
me,
things, I really like it. I like it I like it Javonte Williams game here. I think he's a solid play, especially with the
yep.
on the bye week replacement or the bye Mageddon. There you're going to have to take viable guys that are going to get work. Bo Nix is a good play this week. Cortland Sutton I'm playing this week, and I even like Adam Troutman. I know last week threw up a dud, but he's been involved in this offense, especially in the red zone. Had a nice red zone target last week. That was unfortunately couldn't come down with it. But
I mean, here's the one thing I will throw caution to Cortland Sutton. He's been playing as a solid wide receiver 1. I'm downgrading him to a wide receiver 2, in my opinion here. There has not been a receiver yet that, besides that Deontay Johnson game back in week 3, that has really come out. Like the last game that they played, Cortland Sutton was 2 of 5 for 32 yards. Even the Rams, they didn't have their big guys. George Pickens, 53 yards. Jamar Chase, 11 targets, 7 catches, 43 yards. Like this Raiders defense could get to the quarterback and cause you to have to pass the ball quick. And I think he had 61 and a touchdown for Tyreek Hill this past game. Like they've been decent enough against the pass, and most of it's because the ground game has been so pathetic that you could run so well on them. You don't get as much passing volume. But I just haven't seen a receiver besides that week 3 game when the Red Rocket came in and threw 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards to Deontay Johnson. In fact, I think Deontay Johnson had 14 targets that game, caught 8 of them for 122 and a touchdown.
those were the days.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know. I just Bo Nix is playing great. I think he's going to get you good on the ground. He's probably going to run one in, but it is a divisional game, and we know how it's in Las Vegas. We know how the Raiders play. I'm not saying it's a trap game for Denver. I'm just saying for Cortland Sutton, I'm not expecting 100 yards and a touchdown here. I'm expecting him to be in the near the 50s, and you got to hope he catches the touchdown.
Sure. So we got another divisional match. I mean, it's the divisional week. Most of these games are divisional. So we got the Cardinals and Seahawks in this game. The Seahawks have been really disappointing as of late, and on the flip side, the Cardinals have been really good as of late. The offenses have kind of been turning around. From the Seahawks perspective, JSN's been really coming along the last couple of weeks, and really love to see that from him. This is kind of the breakout that we thought he was going to be last year. He's starting to really be the number 2 outside of DK. Geno, I'm avoiding starting this week in this matchup, and then Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet's been getting quite a bit of work, especially in the passing game. I don't know if he's going to score. Kenneth Walker's been really good. DK is going to be a start for me, and then Lockett's the odd man out, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's shown that he's going to be the odd man out, and I understand that. Here's the thing. This Cardinals defense has not given up a 200-yard performance from a receiver core at all this season. Not one single game, which I think is a pretty big stat. I mean, they gave up 195 to the Chargers week 7. That was the closest. And next closest was 180. But they've had it middle to high-end 100s. That's about it. And last week, 74 to the Jets. The only 100-yard receivers that have gone against them have been Brandon Ayuk in that massive 147-yard breakout game, which was an anomaly. And then I believe it was Roma Dunze had like 5 for 104 against them, and that was about it. So to me, it shows they could give up the big play, right? But does Seattle have that big play? Maybe with DK Metcalf back. Maybe because of JSN. That could happen. But I think just judging by how these teams even held the Lions to 92 receiving yards across the board from their receivers, you're right. Arizona's defense has been playing pretty good defense this year. I suspect if you're going to give up anything, maybe they give up some Kenneth Walker opportunities here and there.
Yeah,
But
just because the yardage isn't there, I still think touchdowns can come there. So even if you are only getting 60 and a touchdown, it's still a viable play.
yes,
And that's a realistic approach for this
but
offense. And I think
they
with
haven't given
JSN
up a
and
touchdown
DK,
to receivers in 4 straight games.
yeah, they've been good.
They gave up 4 to the Packers, but they haven't in 4 straight games.
Yeah, they've been good.
So
And on the Cardinal side of the ball, Connor, you gotta love. Trey Benson has been taking carries now, and he's looked good. It's mostly because they've been up in games so big that Benson's just been getting work there. We'll see after the bye. It's given them some time to rest. I think Connor's going to have a really big game. McBride, I think Harrison's going to be a little bit more involved into this offense. He's been good, but we really haven't seen the true breakout performance from him yet. Not on a consistent basis as it is, but he's he's fit in really nicely to this offense, which is what we thought when he got drafted there. This is the perfect piece for this offense. And they don't need to throw the ball and spread it downfield. And which is why, from a fantasy perspective, he's been disappointing at times, but the potential is there to go for 140 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think he's the guy, if besides Trey McBride, but he's the guy that's going to really be thrown to here. I mean, like, at the end of the day, there hasn't been anybody on a week-to-week basis that you can trust outside of Harrison in the passing game for the Cardinals. But Kyler Murray has been playing some sound football. He's been protecting the ball, not giving it up. He's been hitting receivers on the run. He's been finding the open man, throwing it away when he doesn't need to, or tucking and running it. He's been playing efficient football. That being said, the Seahawks themselves, they give up a lot on the ground. And if this is a big running game, we know what that spells for the passing game on the Cardinals. That's the only worry here. I mean, we saw the Seahawks game against the Rams. It went back and forth. Rams threw all over him at one point. That was when Cooper Kupp was back. But the Niners last week, only 113 yards through the air. Deebo Samuel did nothing. 93 of that was from Jawan Jennings. 132 for the Falcons game. And Drake London had half of that. So, they are giving up a touchdown. The Seahawks are giving up a touchdown a game to wide receivers. So I expect Marvin Harrison to come down with one here. But we got to see, like, what's the volume going to look like if the running game gets going? Because if it's not just Connor and Trey Benson's getting in there, Benson's good. He's good at the backfield as a pass catcher. He's good as a runner. They could just keep ground and pound this team and send them to their grave and keep the sole spot up there in the division.
Yeah, and the Cardinals have always played the Seahawks well too. Even the Cardinals were bad.
It is in Seattle though, and we'll see what the weather's like there.
Still, yeah. Anyway, this is probably my most anticipated game coming up is the Niners and Packers. I love these old school rivalries. This is just
I guess it's a good one.
I think a really, really good matchup between two good teams. One team, San Francisco, that needs bounce back. Like, they need to start getting rolling. And the Packers, who, come off a great last-second victory last week, but win the game barely. And they weren't even in a position to win the game. They had to rely on the opposing kicker to miss. But, the Packers need to get right, too. And they need to start getting on a push and getting more consistent. So I think from an offensive standpoint,
Green Bay's got 3 losses or 4 losses this season. They're behind the Vikings there, and you've got San Fran that's like teetering on missing the playoffs if you lose this game here.
Yeah, the Niners are 5-5. The Packers are 7-3.
Yeah, 3 losses, so they're 1 game back on the Vikings, or they're 1.5 because they got the loss technically.
And so,
but either way, yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, it's a must-win for both teams.
So this is a game that I'm really anticipating. Like, these offenses are good. I think McCaffrey is going to have his breakout game of this season, his comeback game. I'll look for him to probably get in twice, 2 touchdown game for McCaffrey. We'll see. We'll see. And I think a big part of it is, does Kittle play? This is a different team when Kittle's not on the field.
I think Kittle plays. He sounds like he's like, I'm going to be ready. I'm not missing Green Bay. The one thing that scares me is the health of Brock Purdy with the shoulder. So he barely practiced on Wednesday. Today being Thursday, they said a little bit more than yesterday, which yesterday was like Wednesday was like nothing. So that's something to monitor and watch because that throws a wrench into Debo. That throws, well, maybe not because they'll probably hand some balls off to him, but it throws a wrench into a lot of the passing game. Not as much Kittle because it's a check down, but maybe Juwan Jennings. And then to me, I think then by all means, it is going to be Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
It's going to be his game. So if there's a chance he doesn't play, keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and then for the Packers, I think that this is a game where it's business as usual. You're going to start your guys on this team. I think Tucker Kraft is going to have a better game this week.
Yeah.
I think Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, it's probably not going to be a Christian Watson day. It's probably going to be Dontavian Wicks or Romeo Dobbs. Jaden Reed, you're going to start, and Josh Jacobs, you're going to start. I like Jordan Love in this game too. This defense has been good, but it's not been the 49ers defense of old. And I think that this is, again, a must-win game where this offense needs to come and get it rolling.
Yeah, in fact, I'm looking at what the wide receivers have done against the 49ers. You take out week 10 for the Buccaneers when they had nobody to throw to, and it was literally just Kate Otten. But Jackson Smith and Jigba, 110 yards, 70 for DK last week. Then against the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb still had 146. Jalen Tolbert, and 2 touchdowns, might I add. And then even like Seahawks, the first game against them, Lockett 65, JSN 53. Like they're going to be able to pass the ball on the 49ers. So I do like Love, and that's where they're hitting pay dirt. Like this past game with Josh Jacobs is the first time we saw him take over the offense. And I don't suspect that being the case every game, but keep an eye on Nick Bosa, keep an eye on Brock Purdy.
Yeah. We got 2 games left. All right. So getting into the Sunday night game here.
This is the game I'm excited for, Sunday night.
Eagles-Rams.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this should be a really good matchup, too.
Eagles are -3 with a 48.5 under-over. I think it's the highest game of Sunday. Oh, no, sorry, 49.5 in Indianapolis. It's second highest for Sunday. Monday night's the highest with the Chargers, Baltimore.
Yeah, this is a game I think that the Eagles. I like the Rams in this game, to be honest with you. I think that the Rams defense is very underrated, especially the defensive front. They got the 2 kids from Florida State that have been absolutely fantastic this year. And Stafford's been good. I mean, you look at Puka and Cooper Kupp. When they've gotten back healthy, I mean, even when they weren't healthy, Stafford was still doing Stafford things and making people that are otherwise irrelevant relevant. KYREN's kind of taken a dip the last 2 games from his normal performances.
I think it's mostly due to the fact that they've been so successful through the air in big chunk plays that they haven't had a big chunk on the ground. This is one of those games that could be interesting, though, because the sheer fact that the Eagles look good on paper against the running back. I
just realized right now that I'm have to play against 2 of your running backs on Sunday night.
Yeah, that's why I'm excited for this game, dude. But if you look at the Giants versus the Eagles, Tyrone Tracy 6 for 23, Chase Brown 12 for 32, ETN 3 for 24. They've been pretty good. That's week 7, 8, 9. Then Rico Dowdle had 53 on 12 carries, over 4 yards per carry there. And then last week, Brian Robinson Jr. looked great on 16 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. I think at some point, like KYREN can break through and put up some good numbers. He's a good enough running back. He's better than all the guys that I just mentioned right there in those names. Now you look back at the beginning of the season, Josh Jacobs had 84 yards against him. Bijan Robinson had 97 against him. Alvin Kamara had 87. So like early in the season, they were weak against it. And even like you look at Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, each had 10 for 49 against him. They just don't give up the touchdowns to the running backs that often because once you get in that goal line, the big bodies come in. That's where I think the passing game for KYREN Williams, he was missed last week, which would have been a game winner for the Rams, is going to be unleashed a little bit more in this game, the short yardage checkdowns to him. But I wouldn't be surprised if Corum gets some more opportunities. And I think you have 2 prolific pass catchers for the Rams. So I'm with you. I think Matt Stafford has an uphill battle for himself. But when you have Puka healthy and you have Cooper Kupp healthy, I think it's going to be difficult for the Eagles offense, and that'll open up the running game too.
Yeah, and I think it's going to open things up for the Eagles offense as well. So I do like Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown in this game. Goddard, I think, has been a good play since he's been healthy. And then Saquon, obviously, you're going to start.
Yeah. And when you look at the receivers against the Rams, they're not unstoppable. They give up some good plays. Kendrick Bourne had 70 a touchdown last week.
Yeah.
Malik Washington had that rushing touchdown the week before. JSN had 180 and 2 against them in week 9. And even Justin Jefferson went for 115. So they're going to give up some big plays and they're to receivers. Are they going to give it up to A.J. Brown? Are they going to give it up to Devonta Smith, who's been kind of like the hidden player, like hasn't been used that wildly? And, is it going to be Goddard? But again, this team is run on the backs of Saquon Barkley. If they get him going, the whole offense is open.
Yeah, it opens up so much. So we made it to the final game, Monday night. We got the Ravens at Chargers, the Harbaugh.
Oof. The Harbaugh.
The Harbaugh. So right before Thanksgiving, too. Great
I know.
Timing.
I know. It would have been better if this game was on Thanksgiving.
They should have had it on Thanksgiving. Didn't they do that? They did that one year. They had the
I
Ravens,
thought they did play each other.
Yeah, the Ravens-Niners on Thanksgiving. I think they did have that game. Anyway, I digress. So we got the Ravens and Chargers. Chargers have been playing really good football. I mean, sound defense. They run the hell out of the football. Two teams that really like to run the football and then throw off of it. This is actually a good matchup. It doesn't look it on paper, but this is a good matchup.
I think this is a game that the Chargers could win and give a second loss in a row to the Ravens.
Yeah, I think they've been playing really, really good defense against the run. Now, like again, there's no running offense in football like the Ravens' running offense. So It's a different thing to consider to stop Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry, for the most part, was bottled up last week, and still ends up getting a touchdown. Lamar does Lamar things, and just an MVP caliber season this year. Zay Flowers has been absolutely outstanding. There's a lot of pieces on this offense, and they've added more. You've had the last 3 weeks. Bateman get more involved into this offense. And then on the Chargers side of the football, I mean, outside of J.K. Dobbins, you've had McConkey and QJ just been really, really solid for the receiving core there. Now, if McConkey doesn't go, do I like the Chargers' chances just as much and by playing Palmer in that role? Probably not.
No, but Will Dissly has been able to do a good job on those intermediate passing routes. He's been a good relief valve for Herbert. The one thing when you look at this Chargers offense, I just want to highlight the Ravens real quick. The Chargers defense has started to let up a little bit more through the passing game the past 3 weeks. Now, albeit the Browns was only 176 total yards and a touchdown. I believe it may have even been a late touchdown, but Titans let up 2 touchdowns to Calvin Ridley. I mean, we saw what Jamar Chase and T. Higgins did to them this past week. But when you look at what the Ravens are giving up on the passing side of the ball, you got to love the pass catchers for the Chargers. I mean, the Steelers couldn't do anything against them this past week. That's the anomaly. But 300 yards to the Bengals and that unbelievable victory for the Ravens. But even Broncos passed well on them. The Browns passed well on them in week 8. Cedric Tillman, 99 yards. Obviously, the Chargers don't have to do that when they're running the ball well, but we know the Ravens can stop the run well, which is where this may get interesting. And I also think, too, if McConkey can't go, you're going to see a little bit more out the backfield passing work between Dobbins and Edwards. I think you're going to see Dissly. And QJ has been secretly, 3 straight games of the touchdown, has been secretly like a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football over the course of the past 3 weeks. So that's an interesting guy. Is he able to pick up the pace and do a little bit more for his team without McConkey? I don't know. And if Palmer's not going to do what McConkey can do, we know that already. But I just think with or without McConkey, this offense can keep up with the Ravens' high-flying offense. I don't think it's going to be as low scoring as that Steelers game was, and obviously Vegas doesn't think so either.
No. But that's the slate. We got through the full thing. Next time we'll be in person. John will get better. Drink lots of fluids.
Well, we're going to have a big episode next week. We're going to be doing one culminating episode for the Thanksgiving week just because
that's right.
It's Thanksgiving. We want everybody to get their information right away, enjoy your families, enjoy the holiday. So we will be seeing you guys on a waiver episode coming Tuesday morning. That will also encompass our Thanksgiving Day preview into the Sunday preview as well. And if there's any information that needs to come out of that afterwards due to injuries or anything that happens, we will give you updates via shorts along the way.
Yeah. And don't forget to go ahead and like and subscribe. Hit that notification button and stay up to date.
Wherever it is on my hands, hit it.
It's right down there somewhere. Just poke that button. Make sure you hit that bell. Drop a comment on your favorite start of the week. Can't wait to hear from you guys. We'll get the Thanksgiving episodes. Good luck in your matchups this weekend. Until next time, see ya.